Greetings, welcome to Historical Boxing Society podcast. Today I am going to do a reading from the book of boxing with a newspaper article about Joe Goddard versus Peter Jackson bout. We're in for a treat because this is actually not a newspaper recount of the fight, but an eyewitness report, and it even gives the prelude before the fight happens. This is a very difficult article to find, and at least a few of the different search engines I was not able to locate it, but I came across this and I had to read it here. So this is an eyewitness account. After I finish this, I will actually read the newspaper recount the next day. So we're going to get both versions of the Peter Jackson versus Joe Goddard 8-round bout that took place, as there's some real controversy as to who exactly had the upper hand as the better between the two. So that's why having the luxury of reading an eyewitness account is just about the most accurate thing that we could find here. So this is talking about before they even got together. I'm going to start the reading here. The men were brought together at Trilly's Victoria Hotel, Melbourne, by Professor William Miller, and I was present. Goddard absolutely refused to enter the ring unless Peter promised to let him remain on his feet for the full time, 8 rounds, and divide the 400 pounds offered by, if my memory allows, by Messer O'Connor, who at the time was the lesser owners of the Crystal Palace. Peter struck out for a go on its merits, but Goddard wouldn't have it. His proposal must be accepted or rejected. Acceptance meant 200 each, rejection nothing, and after vowing for some time he would never consent, Peter gave way. Goddard trained hard. Jackson, living at the Cliff House Hotel, never prepared a moment, and during the intervening weeks was initiated into the mysteries of Freemasonry and made a member of Warmouth Lodge. I went to Melbourne with Jackson a few days before the convincing date, and he enjoyed himself as thoroughly as he always did, not bound to the excerpts of training. We saw Vengeance, owned by then president of the Melbourne Athletic Club. And though fully of information about the right quarries about the nag, backed by each other sardonks, I don't know what they're talking about there, I then, albeit Martin Costello did the right thing, but led by his way. Jackson entered the ring, a 6-foot wide space, really an octagon in shape, and used ordinarily as band ratowns. 6,000 or 7,000 people were jammed together on the floor. Okay, now I actually got to get to somewhere here. From the onset, Goddard did his very best to beat Peter, who contented himself with jabbing the left as to stop the barrier boys' rushes. Not an ounce more power was put in the blows than the occasion required. Look out for this fella, Peter. He's trying to lick you, I remarked to Jackson in his corner after round 1. Oh, no, said the big fella said the good-natured black, the soul of honor himself. You're wrong. It's only his rough way. Never mind about his rough way, replied Jackson. I've seen him fight before, you haven't. But Peter shook his head and smiled and went along wearily for the second round. Still more broken up for the third, though the mad bull at the gate rushes did his poor condition had to stand. Did Goddard swing to Jackson's hips? The crowd went mad with excitement. Did Peter's shoulder stop a swing intended for the jaw? Hundreds cheered the white man wildly. Joe Goddard only had to effect contact with Peter's elbow or anywhere, even though Jackson might have purposely taken the blow there, and the bulk of the house was beside itself, cheering for Joe Goddard. However, to make a long story short, Jackson very early was a sadly disgruntled boxer. Still, his superior defense stood to him, and Goddard rarely landed a blow, certainly never a good one, else there would have been all up with his opponent. Joe went to the boards 4 times in the first 3 rounds, mostly through rushing and onto Peter's straightened left, intended only as to stop the rush, while Jackson fell but entangled with those of the floundering feet of Joe Goddard. The wrong about the verdict was that Jackson suffered, for he only had to remain on his feet the full term, easily beat Goddard on points. What man of intelligence will argue otherwise? One was the most clever boxer in the world, and the other dependent on force and insensibility to punishment only. A fighter of indomitable pluck, remarkable strength, and wonderful recuperative powers was Joe Goddard. I am giving dead Joe all that he is entitled to, which is indefinitely more than Mick Nathan appears to give dead Peter. However, so much was Goddard impressed with the idea that he had been robbed that he could never wheedle him into the ring in opposition to Jackson again. Peter wanted to get even, and Joe knew it. The Melbourne Athletic and the Sydney Amateur Gymnasium clubs bid against each other for a fight to a finish between the pair, and the Sydney body stayed longest, offering £1,150 to the winner and the balance to the loser. No, emphatically replied Joe Goddard. Why? Was asked of him. I'll only face Peter if you make the losers in $350, he answered. Preposterous was the club's stance, and they waited days for Joe to climb down from his high horse, but not a halfpenny penny would he bulge. Meanwhile, Jackson, chafing at the delay and fearing that he might lose his man altogether, pleaded with the club to let it go. I will be the sufferer if I win, he pointed out. What does not matter to me. I want the fight, said Jackson. Sorry, moving the page. Of the day, met. Oh. Okay, so athletic gymnasium behalf on the Sydney Athletic Gymnasium Club, Goddard signed articles, but he would go no further for a telegram a week or 2 later. From him declared the match off. Jackson soon afterwards returned to America, sat deeply disgusted. Make a match with me, please, he begged of the humble servant as we shook hands at the deck. I met Goddard in Scott's Hotel subsequently later, but he point-blank refused to connect with me. You badly want to get him licked, said Joe, but I'm not going to give you the chance. At this particular time, Goddard was a novice, writes Mick Nathan. So much of a novice that he had won some of his best fights, beaten Owen Sullivan, Charlie Dunn, Mick Dooley, Fogarty, Ned Ryan, and Luke Keegan. He was not a novice. Your memory is faulty, Mick Nathan. Oh boy, there was little to choose from between Slavin and Jackson, said the communications from which I am dealing. In their memorable battle in England between Peter Jackson and Frank Slavin, Slavin had the best of the mill till the last 2 rounds that were fought. The audacity of this iron-cheeked retard to say such a statement in the face of the facts that records may be turned up by anybody. Only once in the 6th or 7th or 8th round, I forget which, but I think the 7th, did Slavin appear to have a chance. Every other moment was very much Jackson's favor. Okay, so we can see from the comments there that the person speaking believed that Goddard was the reason there was no rematch, as he refused to. He was the one that put the stipulation that 350 pounds would go to the loser, and then the club declared it as preposterous. Jackson claimed he didn't care; he just wanted the fight to go happen, and they haggled for some amount of time. Jackson left for America, and then Joe Goddard claimed the rematch off, as they stated there when the guy confronted him in the hotel. So now we're going to have the newspaper recount. So this is just a matter of weeks after the Dooley match here. This is November 23rd, 1890. Peter Jackson and Joe Goddard fight a draw of 8 rounds. So we know Goddard's in shape because he just managed to fight earlier in the month, actually, against Dooley. And as we can see from the statement there, Jackson did no training for the affair because it was 8 rounds, and the conditions were that Jackson was going to get money, as Goddard needed to be on his feet at the end of the 8 rounds, so he was just trying to get himself a decision. So we're going to read the actual newspaper accounts and see how much that differs with the Eyewitness account. So here we go here. November 22nd. Advices by streamer from Sydney via the Honolulu says Peter Jackson and Joe Goddard fought an 8-round draw at Melbourne. Jackson was in poor condition. The fight took place at the Crystal Palace. Jackson was somewhat fatter than his opponent and had a longer reach than one Joe Goddard. He weighed in 14 stone to Goddard's 13. So Jackson outweighs Goddard, which is pretty interesting. Jackson was the first to get a blow, reaching Goddard's body. Goddard rushed and got home on Jackson's face. Jackson drove him back to the ropes with the left hand on the body stab. A clinch followed. Goddard tried a LeBlanc swing and grazed Jackson's mouth. The round closed with vicious infighting. That's the end of round 1. Goddard took the bad in the second round. He rushed and sounded Jackson about the ribs. Half-arm fighting followed, and Goddard went down and ended the round. So the newspaper, as we can already see, is omitting some knockdowns from Jackson. Because they're only giving one knockdown for the first 2 rounds, which is, we know, inaccurate. Sorry, I got to get my throat lubricated here. Jackson was perishing when time was called. Goddard started in with both hands. Jackson lowered his head as if he tried a body hook, and Goddard struck his left on Jackson's head, getting a bad cut going to the ground, where he remained some times. Rising, he forced Jackson to the ropes with smashes on the rib, but was sent down again with a blow on the face. Goddard struck his left on Jackson's head, getting a bad cut going to the ground, where he remained some seconds. So it may have been that Goddard went to the ground there. It's not quite clear which one fell. Rising, he forced Jackson to the ropes with smashes, but was sent down again with a blow to the face. Yeah, I believe that's Goddard that's going down twice there in round 3. The 4th round was one of the fiercest, the men punishing each other with both hands. Goddard made a rush and forced Jackson across the ring amid great excitement from the crowd. The men were both too much exhausted to get in a knockout blow. In the 5th, both went down during a heavy counter as their feet became tangled. Goddard got in a number of clean blows in the face and head. A rigging left-hander forced Jackson across the ropes as he showed signs of distress. The blows were pretty evenly exchanged during the 6th round. In the 7th round, Goddard forced the pace, landing a left on the jaw and a right on the ribs. Jackson fought more wearily and got in several good body blows on Joe Goddard during this round. In the 8th and the last round, Jackson tried hard to wind his man, but Goddard stood up to him, stopping Jackson's rush. There was some smart exchanges, and Goddard essayed to rush, but Jackson stopped him with a left-hander on the ribs. Goddard landed his right and a left on Jackson's face. Time was called and the contest closed. Professor William Miller refereed and said that one of the judges decided in favor of Jackson and one of the judges decided in favor of Joe Goddard, so it was declared a match, or declared a draw, sorry. That's probably a farce because Goddard went down in this article a total of 4 times, 5 times including when they were tangled. Jackson's only fall was when the feet were tangled in round 6, I believe that was. So I'm not quite certain how it could be declared a draw with one person going down 4 times and the other person going down 0 times, other than the feet tangled fall, which I'm not counting for either fighter there. And the eyewitness accounts that I read previously states that Goddard went down 4 to 6 times. I think it states in his article. So again, not sure how that's declared a draw. And they also say in the last and the 8th round, Jackson went after Goddard as he was the aggressor there. So again, which would lead to the decision that it was probably not a draw. But you can make your own decisions there. This is a reading of Peter Jackson versus Joe Goddard, the controversial match. All indications point to Jackson being poorly trained, but in any almost both stories, he came out ahead on Joe Goddard. Goddard refused to do the rematch with him because he was squabbling with the club about the loser getting 350 pounds. That's what delayed the match, was his stipulation. And Jackson just wanted the rematch to happen. And they were actually going to do a finish fight. That's what the sum was for, a finish fight. So it probably would have been just as spectacular as Slavin versus Jackson. But this is quite a bit earlier in both of their careers. Goddard's still pretty much at the height of his youth here, because this is in the year 1890, and Jackson appears to be before he leaves for America again. The match with Old Chocolate Joe Goddard had already happened some years earlier. This is after that, when he returns to Australia. So it's an interesting bit of history here, as we have the newspaper reading and the eyewitness account. So we have a full comprehension of what took place between the two fighters. Thanks for listening. This is the Historical Boxing Society, and that was the Peter Jackson versus Joe Goddard match of the fall of 1890.